BattleMech is an armored humanoid-shaped engine of war, commonly used for mobile warfare purposes, standing between 8 to 14 meters tall and massing from 20 to 100 tons. Mechs are in general seen as the kings of conventional combat vehicles, faster, better armed and armored than any ground unit, which creates a staggering firepower to manpower ratio in comparison to any ground force on the battlefields of the 31st century. While best suited for ground combat, BattleMechs are capable of operating under any environment, be it underwater, hazardous areas, and in the void of space. Because of that, the best way to fight a mech is with another mech, preferably one larger and more powerful. Another huge advantage they possess is that any mech is capable of replicating many of the basic movements any human is capable of performing, which allows them to better avoid, deflect, and even lessen the impact of weapon fire. Despite all that, BattleMechs aren't perfect machines. There is an incredible expense with producing and maintaining mechs, which can be a logistical nightmare for the most unorganized military unit to keep them operational, especially the lowest of them all, pirates and bandits. Any mech can cost multiple millions of C-bills, with some of their cheapest equipment in the hundred thousands of C-bills. Because of that factor, the cheaper and more available conventional ground force have a continued role in the modern warfare of the 31st century. History, armor discovery and development. In the early age of spaceflight, mechanical suits and exoskeletons have been developed to increase the strength, speed, and endurance of the workforce in the industrial sector, while decreasing the strain posed on the human body. Of course, despite this technological improvement, the first ones of their kind were extremely primitive, slow, clumsy, severely limited to hydraulic motions. Some may even have been utilized for combat by the Alliance Global Militia, but the police force role of the colonial marines prevented any development for true military purposes, despite the discovery of the polyacetylene monomer strand during that period. Another reason is that excessively long strand length and high energy requirements to cause the contraction did reduce the viability for the usage of that same technology. Early attempts at combining multiple strands to create bundles or muscles with the intent to reduce the length and increase the strength of the contraction ultimately proved unsuccessful due to the uncoordinated contraction of individual strands. It would take more than 2 centuries, with the fall of the Terran Alliance and the end of the Exodus era, for researches on this technology to bear any more fruit. During the Age of War, the Terran hegemony, under its second Director General Michael Cameron, have embarked in a series of reforms to increase its own efficiency against neighboring interstellar nations, such as the centralization of non-military researches with the foundation of the Hegemony Research Alliance Department, or HRAD. One of these research programs was a collective effort codenamed Operation Musclebound, composed of 5 section leaders and 14 assistants, for improvement of the monomer technology. Professor Gregory Atlas was the principal investigator, his focus on refining the solution through monomer bundle and the improvement of the strand itself. This led to the development of the Schwarzenegger bicep, a bundle of monomer strands interwound with a new nerve circuitry to reduce the initial electrical charge required and to ensure all strands will be triggered as one. On 21st December 2350, the University of Zimbabwe, Experiment 45 Bravo, saw the 2-meter-long, 10-centimeter thick bundle contract to 10% of its original length, exerting a force of contraction so tremendous that it destroyed the measurement weights harness, even catapulting the lead test weights into the air. This result wildly exceeded the creator's expectations. For his effort on this breakthrough in myarmor technology, with the development of the first viable myarmor bundle, Professor Atlas would receive a Nobel Prize. Workmechs and other discoveries. Soon enough, during the reign of the third Director General Margaret Cameron, the development of the first viable myarmor bundle was quickly adapted into the civilian market for industrial purposes, such as making exoskeletons more efficient. Those exoskeletons soon found enough employment for a myriad of uses, from construction and mining to research and rescue, as well as firefighting. While the hegemony obtained another decisive advantage in technological sophistication, this led to the creation of the very first workmech, known also as industrial mechs. These machines revolutionized commerce and industry itself. Since the early age that humanity spread across the stars, skilled labor was in very short supply on many colonial worlds across human-known space. With the coming of the workmech, productivity was boosted substantially. Quickly, workmechs found use in rear action support for the hegemony armed forces as well. It wouldn't be long for Professor Atlas, who was bestowed later on with a Nobel title because of this discovery, to have its own research being used by the military, who was interested in adapting his initial breakthrough for frontline combat roles. And his teamwork for military purposes produced many decades later a brand new war machine. However, many other discoveries will be needed for the BattleMech to become a reliable military asset. One of them will be the Diagnostic Interpretation Computer, or DI computer, a very advanced computer system, though not autonomous, to be considered artificial intelligence, was a distributed computer network serving as a central nervous system and critical for the functionality of a mech in combat. The next one will be the birth of the neural helmet, a piece of equipment which has its most basic functions would use the on-pilot's sense of balance to help keep the machine upright. By reading the brain waves of the pilot and interpreting the complexity of human thoughts, it provided the necessary data for the DI computer, which will allow a BattleMech then the capacity to accomplish most of the basic human movements. The Mackie. The military applications of such technology were apparent, and further research and development continued by the Hegemony Research Alliance Department over the next few decades. It was under the 9th Director General Jacob Cameron, his reign well known for his own militaristic stance concerning interstellar politics, and continual interest in the development of advanced technology for the Hegemony armed forces, that the idea of a war machine born from the initial chassis of the workmech would start taking actual shape. Scobell MechWorks, a corporation known already for the production of various industrial mechs, will be the one branching out for the development and secrecy under the supervision of the HRAD. All those breakthroughs and researches will be brought together by Scobell MechWorks in the making of the Mackie MSK-5S, the very first prototype of a BattleMech known to mankind. Its very first combat trial will be on the 5th February 2439 at the Yakima Firing Center outside the city of Yakima in North America, Ontario. The pilot of the Mackie, Colonel Charles Kincaid, will be facing off against a lance of 4 remotely operated Merkava heavy tanks, all 4 of them loaded and armed for combat. To the surprise of all witnesses, the trial went through beyond anyone's expectation, as the Mackie utterly destroyed all 4 targets without even suffering any significant damage. This single demonstration from a prototype would be enough to usher in the age of the BattleMech. So impressed was he by the results from this combat trial, and facing the backlash of his last military campaigns that ended on poor results and significant loss of lives, Director General Jacob Cameron poured all the resources of his nation into the mass production of this new machine, nearly bankrupting the state in the process for several years. It will be much later on that the inner sphere would experience the first ever battle in recorded history involving BattleMechs. In 2443, a raiding party from the Draconis Combine would strike the planet Styx, garrisoned at the time by the 801st AV Armored Regiment, a HAF unit, one of the very first military units to be equipped with BattleMechs. On the outskirts of the city of Barbados, a full lance of Mackie's MSK-6S went on to destroy a full company of tanks with their infantry support. Facing this new hegemony weapons on a battlefield marred by wet weather conditions and mud, only a single combined tank and a few infantrymen were left alive. They retreated back to their dropship and didn't manage to escape off-world before spreading news throughout the ionosphere about this new weapon of war. This overwhelming victory sends shockwaves across human-known space, as the footage would prove to most that BattleMechs will be a decisive factor in the battles to come. The future, near and far. As news of the engagement on Styx spread like wildfire, the major powers spend a lot of energy to confirm and analyze this new unforeseen development, each coveting the hegemony's new war machine, and dead set on trying to acquire BattleMech technology for themselves. One of the factories in the hegemony was contributed to the mass production of mechs for the HAF was on Esperus 2. It wasn't too long for the Reliant Commonwealth to make an infiltration and steal the blueprints of the Mackie. The best of the Lyran Intelligence Corps, the LIC, was ordered by the Archon for the task, but after 6 years of attempts, they were barely able to just produce a detailed map of the facility itself. However, their efforts weren't in vain, as plans were revived later on, culminating with Operation Prometheus. On 7th February 2455, a team of Lyran commandos made a daring raid on Esperus 2 and succeeded in capturing a great deal of technical data and schematics on BattleMechs. By 2459, the Commonwealth was able to field their very own BattleMechs on the world of Lorek, where one of them crushed Captain General Gerald Marek tank underfoot. This military action announced to the other great houses that the secret for the construction of BattleMech was now out in the open, and each in their very own way worked on obtaining it. The Federated Sons managed through negotiation and a hefty payment to the Commonwealth, while the Draconis Combine just sent their own commando team for a raid on the Lyran Smeg factory on the world of Coventry. The Free Worlds League convinced a Lyran scientist to defect to them, only for the Capellan Confederation to do the same to them years later. It took less than 3 years for all great houses to finally get access to BattleMech technology. And ever since, each of these states is producing as many BattleMechs as they can, especially since these machines were well suited to follow the precepts of the Ares Conventions. Any small force of mechs would follow the doctrine of mobile warfare with very little logistical support, while also preventing much in the way of collateral damage. On the other hand, this same small force could also cause much more devastation against any other ground forces. The introduction of BattleMechs during the Age of War era seemingly drove the ionosphere into a widespread arms race, as a frenzy took over and a huge number of conflicts soon popped up as border worlds became literal hosts of ceaseless engagements against the great houses. Even with the birth of the Star League, the formation of the Star League Defense Force required a near constant production and development for more advanced BattleMechs, which was unabated as the SLDF needed to keep itself far ahead against the troops of the great houses. This arms race came to an abrupt end after the Star League Civil War and the exodus of the surviving SLDF. With the dissolution of the Star League, the ionosphere will plunge into centuries of interstellar warfare, soon known as the Succession Wars. This era of brutal fighting laid waste to whole planets, and with factory destroyed, center of learning demolished, with technicians and scientists killed, the BattleMech design soon similarly regressed. Much of the knowledge and technology gained during the Star League era just became lost tech, and over time entire planetary invasions were soon based around barely ceasing surviving mechs whose production lines had ceased to exist. Equipment shortage, system failures, and similar problems due to machine being employed for centuries sparked innumerable variants of the remaining designs still produced, with field modification and makeshift repairs commonplace. It was the discovery of the Helm Memory Core in 3028 that halt the dark age of technological decline played an important role in revitalizing BattleMech development. For the first time in centuries, production lines were rebuilt. New mech designs began rolling off the assembly lines. Mech production finally exceeded casualty rates. BattleMech development in the Inner Sphere got a major shock with the clan invasion of 3050, as the Great Houses got their first look on advanced technology even beyond the Star League era. However, the Inner Sphere states quickly managed to learn by reverse engineering the clan's technology. By the end of the clan invasion period, they had almost reached their enemy level. Unfortunately, the beginning of the FedCom Civil War and the rise of the Word of Blake would drastically change the situation. During the Blakist Purge period, advanced manufacturing centers from both the Inner Sphere states and the clans were targeted and destroyed. To manage this level of devastation, the Blackists made amazing technological progress, creating some of the most advanced mech ever fielded. But these advancements were lost at the end of the Purge, both by their factory's destruction, the stigma of the Blakist, and the widespread disarmament programs from the Republic of the Sphere, which made these little designs totally extinct. The devastation suffered by the Inner Sphere and beyond made most technological advancements from the late Succession Wars era almost impossible to fabricate anymore. So some factories were retooled to produce much more primitive technology, which became the norm during the Republic era. With the rise of the Hill Clan period and multiple wars going on across the Inner Sphere and beyond, demand for BattleMechs have increased as well. As old machines mothballed since the Republic era and older than the Republic of the Sphere by a few centuries are now back on the battlefields. Interstellar nations are getting out from their most prominent production lines new designs as well. Because of that spike, BattleMechs have become more common as their own prominence is returning across all the battlefields spread within human-known space. Construction. All BattleMechs are built with a frame skeleton and its actuators, generally called an internal structure, copying more or less the human form. The musculature making the internal structure operational consists of myomere muscles, combined in the torso with a fusion engine to power the motive, computers, and other systems. With proper ventilation, it will generate little heat by itself, and a large gyroscope system to provide proper stability. Both contributes greatly to allow bipedal movement. Although all mech have a minimum of heat sinks, heat buildup is a frequent problem for them. Intense combat action can lead to overheating, which puts physical strain on any pilot, and this can even go to an emergency reactor shutdown. Because of the many essential and complex systems that make a BattleMech properly functional, the internal structure needs proper means of defense. First, all mechs incorporate electronic warfare capabilities, which makes them harder for a less advanced targeting system to lock on them, such as the paint coated on mechs containing properties designed to absorb electromagnetic radiation. Second, mechs can also rely on their speed and agility or their unique geometry to make themselves a harder target to hit. However, all BattleMechs rely on several layers of armor plating that is designed to ablate away and so protect the vital system underneath. BattleMechs carry weaponry which brought under one of the three categories: ballistic, energy, and missile weapons. Ballistic weapons produce little heat but need ammunition, weight, and space requirements. Energy weapons require no ammunition and takes less space, but they produce tremendous heating. Missile weapons produce less heat and provides indirect fire, but requires a lot of ammunition. When all else fails, mechs can fight with physical attacks, using their arms, legs, and/or melee weapons to destroy opponents. Aboard the cockpit, pilots connect to their mech by wearing a neural helmet, which reads their brainwaves in order to provide for the mech a sense of balance and make the machine walk, run, and jump. Assisting the pilot is the diagnostic interpretation computer, which basically takes the information collected by the sensors and other systems and presents them to the pilot in an understandable format. As a standard for every BattleMech construction, includes a life support system for the pilot and full environmental sealing by default. Variants: LAM, OmniMech, and ProtoMech. Since BattleMechs designs are often as old as any major faction in the Inner Sphere, and their lifespan goes across many eras, Each war machine could end up with a long list of variants. While some variants are created to fill battlefield-specific roles, the reality most often is that each nation will alternate the original design based on their view for the machine, and most specifically depending on their own logistic capacities. Land-Air Mech, LAM, is a special, very rare type of the Jack-of-all-trade, Master-of-none category. Conceptualized during the Star League by First Lord Jonathan Cameron's madness of an invasion from the periphery, the intent was for the Star League Defense Force to obtain a war machine able to transform from a regular battlemech into an aerospace fighter. These lambs can quickly traverse great distances, giving them a tactical advantage in ground warfare, even if they are clearly meant for reconnaissance purposes. Despite the potential, delicate technology of LAMs is very susceptible to damage. Their general combat performance fell short of any expectation by a large margin, especially with their exorbitant production and maintenance costs. With the end of the Star League and the start of the Succession Wars era, the lambs were largely lost. Only the word of Blake briefly revived the lambs during their purge. These new designs quickly faded into obscurity after their defeat. On the other hand, the Quad V is a hybrid of quadrupedal mechs and combat vehicles, with conversion equipment to switch between both modes. Explored during the late Republic era by clan Hell Horses as a means for them to bolster their military, but the design received mixed reviews. The Quad V requires 2 men to operate the machine, a gunner and a pilot. This mech can be equipped with either tracks or wheels for their vehicle mode, and it has a turret-like torso that can rotate 360 degrees. OmniMech is an advanced concept founded by the clans, and later adopted by the Inner Sphere during the clan invasion, that features modular points with interchangeable weaponry, whereas most battlemechs have a fixed configuration. While battlemechs are modular by default, it is to a limited extent. OmniMech technology broke those limitations by changing out its weapons and equipment in a matter of hours for tactical purposes or mission objectives, where the usual battlemech would require extensive refitting measured by entire months, and despite the time invested, all that work might still result in the chance of malfunctioning. Because of its advanced technology, OmniMechs are very few outside of the clans or the elite forces of the great houses, terribly expensive to maintain. Another advanced concept from the clans, the Proto-Mech, is a unique design to combine elements of a battlemech with those of the elemental battle armor. Due to shortage of material and terrible loss at the end of the clan invasion, scientists of Clan Smoke Jaguar conceived the Proto-Mech to be a way for battle-armored troops to possess the firepower of a battlemech without the large amount of resources required for production. However, the breeding program for this new type of clan warrior for the Proto-Mech ended initially in failure, and the required enhanced imaging system to operate it was still a largely unexplored technology, with long-term negative side effects associated to it. With the destruction of Clan Smoke Jaguar, many clans then acquired the technology for their own purposes, and Proto-Mechs were then produced in limited numbers. With a full-blown training program created during the end of the Collapse era, Proto-Mechs were used exclusively by clan forces then, at least from the few who still would expand on it and produce new classes. The only spheroid faction to explore this questionably ethical technology was the Word of Blake. After the Blake is purged, it was soon forgotten in the ash of their own destruction. At the dawn of the L-Clan period, there are no official references, with most clans using them because of the technology later connection to the society, a secret cable of clan scientists who attempted to overthrow the general culture of the clans for one of their own making during the Wars of Reaving. Chassis types. There is a variety of chassis types for battlemechs. The first one is the bipedal mechs, separated among themselves in 3 different categories of legs. The vast majority being the humanoid battlemech with knee joints legs. The slightly less common category is the reverse joints bipedal mechs, also known as chicken walker. The last and rarest among those 3 is the digitigrade bipedal mech, which have hip, knee, and ankle joints, but also that walks on their toes. Next category is the tripodal mech, which is rather rare as mechs normally have 2 or 4 legs. While some tripodal mechs were designed as far back as in the early days of the Star League era, the general concept remained mostly obscure for centuries, even during the current Hill Clan period. The quadrupedal mech category, or quad mech, use its arms as legs, and thus provide for them some additional bonus in stability. While slightly more common since the end of the clan invasion due to improvement in their fabrication, this category is much aligned by giving away the overall versatility of BattleMechs and the stigma of the very early designs that proved notoriously flawed, hard to maintain, and very susceptible to breakdowns. Weight classifications. BattleMechs are separated through 4 official weight classifications: light, medium, heavy, and assault. All light mechs are weighing from 20 up to 35 tons, and because of this, their internal structure is limited to a small layer of armor, and they are lightly armed. This vulnerability is countered by higher efficiency from their fusion reactors, and thus superior mobility is the common trait for their survival on the battlefield. The low production cost and good supply of spare parts meant that light mechs are rather widespread throughout the Hemisphere, no matter the era. Most of them are used in general as scouts and anti-personnel units, but some with relatively heavier armament do see frontline combat duty instead. The workhorse of most armies, medium mechs weighs between 40 to 55. They fall in the vacuum between the agile light mechs and the powerful heavy mechs. While unable to match each class in their specialties, medium mechs are the most balanced in terms of speed, armor, and weaponry, making them tremendously versatile. The fastest of them serves as command units among light mechs, or as flanking units for their heavier counterparts due to being more mobile and bring their weapons to bear on vulnerable areas. Given time and proper terrain, medium mechs can be superior combatants in single combat. Solely employed for frontline combat duty, heavy mechs weighs 60 to 75 tons. Being less versatile and slower than medium mechs, they compensate for this by having heavier armor, more weapons, payloads. Capable of delivering heavy firepower over long ranges while retaining enough mobility, heavy mechs are a formidable force to behold. Some designs are more adapted to very specific roles in combat, improving the overall combat performance of their unit, but making them a poor choice for single combat. For those specialist mechs, the support of their partner units is paramount. Weighing between 80 to 100 tons, assault mechs are the juggernauts among battle mechs, able to mount up to 50 tons of weapons and thick armor protection. Because of their tremendous firepower, assault mechs perform best as the spearhead of any frontal assault or augmenting entrenched defensive positions. Typically used as command units, assault platforms, and fire support. As a trade-off for their lack of speed and mobility, they are generally very slow and often require friendly units to protect their flanks. Due to the prohibitive cost and very limited production, assault mechs made up only a small fraction of all battle mechs. Unit roles. The purpose of a scout unit is to operate in the dangerous role of reconnaissance for the main force, to spot for indirect fire, and even bully missile boats and snipers. The scout mobility is a defining feature for their role, but they also tend to carry advanced electronics to increase their opportunity to attack an enemy from the rear. Also, any specialized gear that can boost the effectiveness of other units will most likely be installed on any scout mech, such as the missile boats. They also tend to be very cheap to produce, and they can also overwhelm larger mechs with sheer numbers. Ambushers are combat units intended to lie in wait before attacking an unprepared unit. They can do a huge amount of damage, assuming that they can stay out of sight until the enemy gets within range, as an open field battle will go against any ambusher quickly because of range weakness. Because of this, they will utilize cover as much as possible, and their role is commonly employed in urban combat. While not as fast as scout units, ambushers possess enough mobility, and as cheaper units overall, they can often be used to swarm the enemy. Skirmishers are considered the most suitable for fluid combat environment due to being fast, mobile, and armed enough for their weight class. Fast enough to outrun anything they can outshoot, skirmishers are great at picking their battles and can easily dictate engagements with enemy units, which provides flexibility for any battlefield commander. While appropriate for flanking actions and breakthroughs, they are not suited for direct assaults against entrenched enemy positions. When used in such assaults, they need to be supported by sniper and missile bolts. Strikers are fast and heavily armed units, but tend to die easily due to being lightly armored. Good movement is critical for them to get into higher positions and fire from it, focusing their combined units on a single designated target in order to move it quickly. Because they need to be team players for excelling on the battlefield, strikers work well with other units, especially heavier units like skirmishers, to provide the needed support for the target the striker is providing. Brawlers are the frontline units, capable of performing adequately in any situation and can engage targets most ranges, though they aren't specialized for extensive combat or any specific range. Because they can be counted on for any combat situation, a huge portion of the iconic and reliable mechs across the inner sphere are brawlers, which means the core of any BattleMech military force will be composed of them. Missile bolts are units carrying numerous missile launchers, or very large ones. This means that they are capable of providing indirect fire and or do a lot of damage from very far away. As providers of heavy, long-range fire support, most tend to sacrifice close-range defense in return. In order to avoid close-quarters combat, they operate nearby with skirmishers and or strikers as support, generally getting close to the targeted units, while the missile boats provide fire support from behind full cover, such as a hill. Snipers can be similar in their fire support role to the missile boats on the battlefield, but they rely instead on very high damage from their weapons fire at any mech in the open. Since they can attack from a completely hidden location, snipers usually use their speed to move quickly from a firing spot to another, any cover to increase their stealth before firing and long-range distance capability of their weapons, as they have very few close-range means to defend themselves. Juggernauts are categorically the slowest combat units, used in both assault and defense roles. Heavily armored and heavily armed, they are both the line holders and the siege breakers, uncontested masters of short-range combat with their heavy weaponry, eradicating enemies with a few trigger pulls. Juggernauts have tremendous protection that increase their longevity on the battlefield, which means anyone will require a titanic amount of firepower to take them down. These behemoths are very popular as mechs to put any commander in, increasing their survivability while they lead on the battlefield. MechWarriors. To understand what it means to be a MechWarrior, the best way is to cover the very first mech jock who piloted a BattleMech on the battlefield. Recorded history gave this designation to a man named Charles Kincaid. Charles was born in 2413 on the world of Kilbourne, from Elysia, member of House Kincaid, a wealthy, well-connected, and very influential family across the Terran hegemony. Father of several sons, Elysia quickly put high expectations on his eldest son, Charles. So from an early age, the boy was raised to honor his family's extensive military heritage, which stretched as far back as from the Second World War on Terra. His own father was also ready to use bribes of money and real estate on the world of Kilbourne to ensure his first son will gain the best education and opportunities. Thankfully for his father, the boy was very intelligent and highly capable on his own. Once he graduated from a prestigious preparatory school, Charles traveled to Terra and attended the Academy of West Point with a retinue of tutors, advisors, and trainers provided by his father. Charles grew there into a very skilled tactician and charismatic leader. Despite not facing a true form of hardships or real challenge, he graduated and soon joined the Hegemony Armed Forces with the rank of captain. At the age of 22, Charles finally got a first true test. As the Tikhonov Grand Union voted to join the Kaplan Confederation, the people of Tybolt appealed to join the Terran Hegemony instead. While the Hegemony was willing to grant for the system of Tybolt a protectorate status, this political move was far from uncontested, and by 2435, the Hegemony Armed Forces arrived in the system itself to face the Kaplan Confederation Armed Forces for the control of the planet. Director General Jacob Cameron placed a lot of pressure on Charles as the young officer was put in charge of the strategic planning and operations for the campaign. In return, he also deployed on Tybolt the new Merkava Mk-7 heavy tanks, the very first fusion-powered main battle tank of the Terran Hegemony. Soon enough, Charles succeeded in using them to their full potential, as the Merkava Mk-7 enjoyed great success against the Kaplan forces. During the campaign, the 132nd Heavy Armored Regiment lost its commander from a Kaplan airstrike. Despite the initial shock, Major Theodore Cameron rallied his forces and led from the front to make a breakthrough in the Kaplan line across the Aswan Ridge. This action alone was enough to break the stalemate and make Tybolt an official Hegemony protectorate. Along with this distant relative to the Director General himself, Charles was applauded as one of the pivotal heroes during this campaign. Enjoying good relations with the ruling House Cameron and with his father's contact in a number of weapons firms, Charles will end up becoming the final test pilot for the Mackie prototype. The pressure to gain such great prestige made him willing to succeed at all costs. On the 5th February 2429, then Colonel Charles Kincaid squared off against remote-controlled Merkava Mark 7 heavy tanks and was successful, ushering with this demonstration the age of the BattleMech. However, having his own mark in history came with a price. Charles Kincaid faced numerous charges of favoritism, mostly due to his father's meddlings and bribes. Also, while nobody knew at the time, rush to launch the Mackie on time meant the experimental neural helmet damaged the pilot nerve tissue. While the issue was quickly discovered thereafter and fixed in later neural helmets, the damage was done for Charles, and his brain will deteriorate over the following decades. Despite those setbacks, Charles went on with his military career, commanding an entire company of BattleMechs, winning the 801st Heavy Armored Regiment. In 2443, during a tour of duty on the planet of Styx, Charles' unit would face a raiding party from the Draconis Combine. His lands will be involved in the first actual BattleMech combat in the Inner Sphere, destroying a company of armored with their infantry support on the outskirts of the city of Barbados. Despite this overwhelming victory, with the scandal still fresh in his mind, Charles covered his own participation in the fight, giving the laurels to his own assistant and lover, Major Amanda Cunningham. Unfortunately for Charles, the battle at Styx would be his very last one as a MechWarrior. Though he remained a successful officer for a time, his growing tremors in his limbs forced him to leave frontline duties, despite still being the pilot of the Mackie he has since Styx in the unit roster. His own family knew for a while the truth on the matter, but with the backing of the government highest level of the Terran Hegemony, their official stance was that Charles was suffering from brain damage he received during the Styx campaign, and he would never recover from this injury. By 2481, Charles Kincaid finally died in his family estate on Kilbourne at the age of 68. Charles Kincaid's life embodies mostly what someone can expect if they take the path of a MechWarrior. BattleMechs are such important war machine in the Great House's armies that a majority of them are in the hands of nobles, very loyal officers from families with a long military history, or exceptionally skilled pilots enlisted to fight for their sake. As such, most interstellar nations will work to keep those machines and their pilots under their umbrella, no matter the cost. Because of this, as far back as the Age of War era, the MechWarriors quickly became the romantic knights of early interstellar age of humanity. First through the medias, but later on literally with rewards, promotions, and offers to step inside the Great House's nobility ranks. Many nations created as well their very own knighthoods and military orders, all with specific conditions of admittance and creeds to live by, thus creating a military brotherhood for the elite. However, despite technological improvements across the centuries, the lifestyle of a mech warrior is still filled with numerous life-threatening risks. The easiest among them to see is that engagements between mechs can be very strenuous, records showing countless duels or battles between evenly matched forces to last for entire days without a single pause. This constant strain on the human body requires for mech jocks to keep themselves in active shape, as their own stamina can be the very last factor that would make the difference between life and death. The next factor is that BattleMechs do run hot during such brutal engagements, and the residual heat exposure will pitch all MechWarriors very near the real risk, dehydration and heat stroke, which is countered to an extent to the cooling vest all MechWarriors wear. When the heat itself won't cause the shattering and detonation of all ammunition in the machines, or cause the emergency shutdown of the fusion reactor, and abruptly stops any mobile battlemech to turn them into easy prey for anyone ready to shoot at. Next in line is the neural connection made through the neural helmet that allows all MechWarriors to establish a special bond with their machine. While it is often seen as the special trait required to be a MechWarrior, as most people aren't able to endure the interface effect from the neural connection without being disoriented or even motion sick. However, even if it isn't proven yet, this primitive extension of their mind through an entire war machine could be the spark of many strange quirks found among MechWarriors. Develops in time superstitions and eccentric behaviors, pastimes, and/or obsessions. The worst traits of note are crippling level of narcissism, delusions concerning their own mortality, and absolute dehumanization of the pilot for their fellow humans. Many MechWarriors feeling truly alive only once they are inside the cockpit of their war machines. This also can be explained with the general view of mechs being more valuable than the pilot themselves, as machines can be easily replaced, but a MechWarrior surely can be. Another aspect is that most well-maintained battlemechs are family heirlooms, being on active duty for centuries, while many generations of pilots make use of them to stomp across the battlefields of the inner sphere. There is a common expression that can summarize this cultural view: kill the meat, save the metal. Last but not least is that while battlemechs are very mobile and possess a gyroscope system to keep their balance, many factors can still cause this war machine to stumble and fall on the ground. This also means that pilots that experience this fall can be easily compared from the fall of a third or fourth floor, with barely enough straps and cushions from their seat to break the impact. Bone fractures are quite common among MechWarriors, as well as loss of limbs and severe injuries to their internal organs, which is why the most common and arduous evaluation to become a MechWarrior isn't as much about shooting skills as it is about a pilot's own capability to keep the mech from falling down, no matter the terrain or the situation. All in all, MechWarriors are taking up a profession best resumed in the single line, live hard, die young. Many will put themselves in lethal danger for the slight chance of glory, and most will violently die in the attempt. But the rewards often can outweigh the risk and pitfalls, such as gaining extensive real estate on the planet and prestige only a very few can reach in a lifetime. However, there is a fate worse than death for any MechWarrior: joining the ranks of the dispossessed. While it is possible for a pilot to eject from its own mech in order to prevent their own death, the risk to be gunned down by the enemy on the battlefield are very real. But if the mech is a total loss, it is a sudden, drastic fall in social status for any MechWarrior, as they most will have no choice but to join any conventional military unit for the remainder of their service. Outcast from their place of prestige, dispossessed can be quite ready to take any acts of pure desperation to obtain enough salvage for repairing their damaged mech, or obtain another one recently freed from their own deceased pilot. While both MechWarriors and BattleMechs are the poster boys of Battletech, and the setting do follow the ups and downs of numerous legends and overcoming adversity across the eras, the common pilots actually go through a very brutal and horribly taxing lifestyle. the lowest of them being bandits and the worst type of mercenaries, own lifespan not going beyond some months or even a couple of years as best. As for the BattleMech themselves, these engines of war are priceless beyond compare and worth their weight on any battlefield. Therefore, most would never see the end of their usefulness, as they can be salvaged by anyone with the proper logistic and technical means, and have them fixed up before sending them back again on the front line. After more than 5, if not even 6 centuries predominance, truly this symbolized the prevalence of mechs over human life.